Hello, I'm Dr Katherine Horton. Dear colleagues, dear ex-colleagues, I'm appealing to you one final time. This is really my last message to you, and I ask you to please take it seriously. I have appealed to you already at the beginning of the year, and no one, not one of you, actually responded with any type of support. And since then, my situation has gone just worse and worse. I understand that it's very hard to believe that something this horrific can happen in Europe. But then again, it's not a premiere. Horrific things have happened in Europe every single decade since records began. And now they're happening again. And furthermore, a lot of awful things have happened to thousands of people every single decade since we have records due to the intelligence agencies. So this is nothing new. And I please ask you to one more time really listen to what I have to say, because essentially I have been blacklisted and the intelligence agencies have blacklisted more and more people. Since the war on terror began, the blacklisting has exploded. There's a blacklisting industry, and not just that, there's a harassment industry, and there's a weapons testing industry that has now grown out of these lawless organizations and their alumni. We really have incredible problems with these agencies who seem to be just subjugating people randomly, and sometimes the most precious members of society. And at the same time, it's these very same organizations that are also corrupting all of our institutions. And these are institutions that, people have died for, that people have fought a lifetime for, to build up. And everything that those institutions stand for are now being ignored, denied by the most ruthless and the most corrupt members of our society. So I'm asking you to take this seriously. And I'm asking all of you personally. I'm going to name you all by name. And I'm going to ask you personally to please help me. Because this is serious, and I'm not just asking you for my sake. It's because there are thousands of people like you, academics, doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, scientists, academics, housewives, single mothers, pensioners, disabled people who have been blacklisted and have been pulled into a ginormous human experimentation program that is currently running for the sprawling pharma and even more sprawling weapons industries. And they are being tested on with impunity. You can find their desperate pleas online. You can find them. They are all there. The only thing you have to type in is targeted individual, and you will find the desperate pleas on Twitter, on YouTube, on blogs, everywhere. And a year ago, I didn't even know anything about this. But now I'm on this program and I am being systematically destroyed. And it hits me harder than most because of my education and because I can speak out. But I have found that for years I haven't spoken out, and the violations against me became ever harder and harder. As I explained in my previous appeal, I was put under overt surveillance in November 2011. And the overt surveillance, at first I didn't understand why it's overt. But then there's an almost identical court case to mine, which is still in the courts. And that's Philip Kerr versus MI5, which started as Philip Kerr versus Attorney General in February 2015 in the High Court. And what Philip Kerr alleges is virtually identical to what I am alleging. But his legal team has uncovered that the reason for the overtness of the surveillance might be that the regulation of the Investigatory Powers Act, RIPA, only covers covert surveillance. So every single unusual aspect of what I'm saying has its explanation. And I'm asking you to bear with me and listen to this and take this seriously. I'm asking for your help. But you, every single one of you whom I'm addressing, you have to personally feel responsible to save an old colleague's life. Because when I appealed to you in January, or in February, I think it was in January, none of you responded. Not one of you were willing to help, and I was pleading for my life. And back then, I had only, in inverted commas, been harassed and intimidated and assaulted for 5 years. And I've been brutally, overtly, demonstratively assaulted hourly for a month. But now it has been 11 months. And now, without any help, without any support, any kind word, or anyone to speak up for me, no one, not a single colleague, not a single family member, none of you, you all brushed me off the table. I had to literally, on my own, find out what is being done to me. I had to, on my own, go to the High Court and plead for my life after I have tried to approach the Investigatory Powers Tribunal in charge of the intelligence agencies, and I have tried to email the German Federal Intelligence Agency, Bundesnachrichtendienst, and requested a cease and desist from the letter, and immediately my hip was damaged in brutal attacks, which immediately followed these two actions. So I had then my hip brutally and permanently damaged. I fled to the High Court in desperation, and I requested an emergency injunction. I was on my own because not one person cared to even know where I was. Not one person cared to actually check up on this court case and maybe pop down and see if everything was being done correctly, because things have not been done correctly. Essentially, British intelligence has used the fact that I was isolated to mock me in the extreme. I received a death threat on the way to the High Court, making references to the death of Lady Diana, asking, did they kill Diana, out of context? 3 days later, after my first High Court hearing, I survived an assassination attempt, travelling at 100 kilometers per hour through a tunnel in Switzerland. And my husband and I, we almost died. And that was whilst the court case was still ongoing. So that is a world premiere. That a High Court litigant received a death threat from the respondents, survived an assassination attempt, and then was so brutally assaulted that she had to flee her own home and flee to her parents, to go into hiding for a week, and then was so brutally assaulted by the respondents the first time she left the house that she was bruised up. And again I had to go alone to the High Court and again see what mockery there was by the intelligence agencies. The fact that literally I would be there waiting to go in as a litigant in person, and MI5 would then have their little harassers wait outside the courtroom and quote back mockingly private conversations and make private references about me and my husband there to make me crack just before I go and see the judge. And all of these outrages happened in the UK, in your country, in your High Court, and the people who are persecuting me are the European intelligence agencies, because they do work together, but it started with your British intelligence. And I'm telling you that in the UK, but also in Germany and also in Switzerland, and also in Poland, and this covers, I think, most of my colleagues, there are thousands of victims in my situation who are being tortured to death, whose attempts to find justice are equally mocked. And there was another world premiere when I went to the High Court, because straight after my High Court hearing, I was so brutally assaulted, I collapsed from pain in my hotel room, because I received such agonizingly painful and highly intense microwave shots to my head. And I ask you, have I ever heard about a UK court case before where the respondents physically, brutally assaulted the claimant and got away with it. And no one cared. Not one newspaper was willing to report it. Not one of my colleagues cared or even wanted to know. And since then, I have been back to the High Court twice without success. Every single time I was mocked. But after the third time, or just before the third time, there was a theatre spectacle where they literally mimed out German military brain interference to me in a little spectacle whose details you can read up on my website. And since then, since my third court hearing, at the end of July, I received an actual direct death threat over the phone. And I started being assaulted with a ferocity I have never experienced ever before in my life. Already by that time, by July, I was sitting in my home in a bunker, which you can see now, just to be able to even sit at a desk. Because at my neighbors, there are high-powered microwave guns positioned, which are firing whenever I just appear from behind the shielding. Have you ever heard about something like that? Because this is real. And I'm not the only scientist in this situation. Because the intelligence agencies have gone AWOL. And they are not the organizations we think they are. They are now publicly maiming and mutilating, mostly women. 70% of their victims are women. And all of these women report the same as I do. But since my last High Court hearing, I had my knee damaged permanently by shots into my kneecap sitting at my own desk. Then I had systematically my thyroid microwaved over about 2 months. I had my lungs drilled into repeatedly. I had certain joints and hand joints wrecked. And what they've been doing the last three weeks is systematically target my eyes. I have received so many high-power shots to my right eye that my right eye feels damaged. I cannot see through my right eye properly anymore. And now it's my left eye. Now they started targeting my left eye, and the attacks are getting ever harder and more brutal. By the time I fled to the High Court, there was already an established pattern that I would be shot into an organ, into an eye, into my face, into my thyroid or my breasts. And if I tried to protect myself by putting metal onto the beam and into the beam line, I would be shot into the genitals. I would be sexually assaulted. And the powerful military microwave beam would be fired into my genitals or my rectum repeatedly. And that was the status back in May, when I was trying to go to the High Court and just asking for an emergency injunction. And none of you cared. I have tried to communicate with this to you, especially to my 2 supervisors who know me best. And you have ignored it all. You have not done your own research, because had you done it, you would have seen that this is a program. And there are high-level whistleblowers whose links I've sent you. I have sent them to you. They are real, and they are saying these people are being tortured in their home using military technology, and we all need to speak out. But now, as it stands, I cannot use half my home because it has huge windows and the transmitters placed at my neighbors' homes fire straight through. So I can't use my living room and I can't use my dining room. And when I have to be in there, it's torture because these sadistic Nazis are firing at me mercilessly. And they don't even have to be there. There's a script that just targets me, a computer program that just picks me out and just shoots at me. Do you understand? This is now the reality in Europe. You took it in your stride that a litigant at the High Court was physically assaulted afterwards, received a death threat and survived an assassination attempt after the first hearing. That then she was physically assaulted such that she had to flee her home. And you didn't care about that, did you? The fact that the same litigant, still in an ongoing High Court case, was bruised up and then irradiated into paralysis with military technology and military weapons grade radiation after that paralyzes the brain. And I've tried to communicate this to you, but this is now the situation. And then I received another death threat, as I said, and they mean it. Because now 2 of my joints have been permanently damaged. I already had my hip joint damaged for just daring to contact German Federal Intelligence and requesting a cease and desist, as I thought it was required by law for me to do, and for submitting a complaint to the Investigatory Powers Tribunal. For writing an email and for submitting a form, my hip was crippled. Do you understand? This is now the level of criminality we are dealing with here. This is now way past mass surveillance and access to our Amazon shopping. Because these people are out to murder. They have murdered people in series and not one person has stopped them. Not one person has spoken up. And they are murdering more and more and more. They are torturing them to death publicly. A Swiss citizen, Britta Jacquard, was tortured to death over several years in Bavaria by the Bavarian Nazis. She was tortured to death, and the German Kriminalamt, the Bundeskriminalamt, the police, the federal police, stood by and watched. But she was not the only one. Do you understand where we are? This is a rerun of the 1940s. Do you understand? Because the police has now been disabled. It has been disabled here in Switzerland, where they refuse to investigate, even though I pointed them to the precise houses where these emitters are, months ago. And when I reported it to the criminal police, they refused to even interview me. They interviewed my husband, who isn't here and who's frankly clueless. And they were not willing to take any evidence from me. When I sent a letter to the German Kriminalamt listing, this is the letter, and I listed all the deaths, all the people who had been tortured to death in Germany, publicly, and I gave them an entire list of VIPs, doctors, general counsels from the World Bank, professors, scientists in several different countries who are all saying the same thing as I do. They actually took my letter, here's my signature, they ripped out my staple, stapled it to their letter here, and sent the letter back, so that the information I sent them does not appear on my file. And I also included here details of an arms manufacturer who's making this stuff for less than a laptop and is advertising it over YouTube. Do you understand? And now since then, since I have tried desperately to follow the legal steps alone, because not a single lawyer was willing to actually help me properly. I received these assaults just during a running High Court case from the respondents. And since the end of that particular High Court case, the assaults have exploded. My life has been suspended. Do you understand? I can't go into my kitchen without being physically shot in the head. I can't go into my living room or my dining room because I'm being shot in the face, in the breasts, in the spine. And if I sit down in the living room, in the genitals. Because these people fire these military weapons through the window. And the script is adding up what dosage I receive. And when I go to the doctor, they read out my medical file and they pass it on to the arms industry. Do you understand? And I am not the only person. There are thousands of people here. Documented cases. They are like you. Do you understand? We now have a situation in the 21st century where the police has been disabled yet once more by the intelligence agencies, and they are running death camp experiments yet once more. But this time it's individual death camps. Your home is your death camp. Your home is your microwave. And I'm saying the same thing as the NSA whistleblower Karen Stewart. And many other people who are not as high profile. We are being shot at. Our homes are being turned into military assault field. To be able to talk to you without having the back of my head cooked, I have to have aluminium shielding on the wall of my study. Around my desk is literally military grade shielding. 12 layers of aluminium to just be able to sit here. At night I'm being tortured. Last night when I went to bed at 2 a.m. desperately trying to answer questions from other victims who were all saying, yes, here I am, I'm a single mom, I've got an autistic child, and they're doing the same thing to me as you said publicly on YouTube. And I was here until 2 a.m. and then I go to bed and the first thing they do is laser my spine. And then I received a massive shot again in the genitals. And then my head was cooked so that I was writhing in pain. That was last night. But it's identical to the night before. I have uploaded onto YouTube an entire video how my brain was damaged in the UK, in a hotel room. And the police did not allow me to report it. The video is up on YouTube. Another video that's up on YouTube is live. You can see how live I'm being shot at every 60 seconds at 4 a.m. in the morning. Because the microwave gun has been hooked up to a script that's running. And every minute, exactly every 37 seconds of every minute, you can see that my measuring device shows a shot being fired into me. And live, you can see that when they shoot into my kidney, which by the way is still aching and therefore has been permanently damaged, I burst out crying there live on camera. Do you understand? People are being maimed in their own home and you're not doing anything. I have begged you for help, every one of you, and not one of you bothered to reply. Tony, I tried to talk to you because you know me best and you're an excellent physicist. And in the end, you didn't even respond. You just sent my emails to my husband claiming I was mad. Did you look at the data as a physicist? Or did you just want it off your desk? Because I'm telling you, this is not going off your desk. Because when I'm not there anymore, there will be others. Just like members of your team have been singled out now, have been stalked by Oxford Security Services and MI5 and are now being mutilated to death. This has already happened, Tony. It's going to happen even more often from now on. Because the number of victims is going up, not down. Do you understand? I didn't want to bother you, but this is serious. People are being tortured to death. And you are a professor at Oxford who can speak up. Do you understand? I don't want to bother you. I'm fighting for my life and the life of those people who are suffering now, and for those who will suffer if we don't do anything. And that could be next time one of your students, because I tell you one thing. What I've seen from the victims is that they're getting younger and younger, as these men, who, as we know from the papers, have been conditioned on child abuse, and a lot of them have been carefully conditioned to turn on the most vulnerable members of society and mutilate them. They are out for ever fresher meat. Do you understand? And that's what the charities see as well. The victims are getting younger and younger and younger, and 70% are women. So again, we have this situation where the degenerate men in the military and the intelligence agencies are out there living out their sexual fantasies. Do you understand? Schizophrenia and paranoia is 60% male. Human experimentation would be 50-50 male-female. But victims who claim to be victims of the intelligence agencies are 70% women. What does that tell you as a data analyst, Tony? And it was terrible. In October, at last, I managed to get through to a journalist who was willing to at last actually talk to me. Her name was Sonia Poulton, and she's a very good journalist. And she just said, listen, can I just please call your old supervisor just to confirm that yes, indeed, you were at Oxford? And I said, of course you can. Because at the time, I was actually in Manchester attending Dr. Stephen Frost versus MOD, trying to reach out to other whistleblowers, the only people who actually understand what's going on. And I did not have my actual certificates from St. John's on me at the time. And I said, yes, please do, because I was due to meet Sonia the next day. And she wanted to check where I was beforehand. And she just made a phone call to you, Tony, and you were not even willing to confirm that I worked for you. Do you know how that feels after you have been shot in the vagina over and over by degenerate psychopaths? When you've been shot in the head almost every 3 seconds for 10 months running? When you've been shot in the teeth and your hip has been crippled, your knee has been damaged, you had to seek medical attention, and meanwhile you're fighting for lawyers, for survival. And you were not even willing to confirm that I worked for you. Do you know how that feels? Because you just wanted it off your case, off your desk. Because writing a book is so much more important than saving lives. Are you all off your rockers? But do you know what the story was with Sonia? In the end, I couldn't meet her. Do you know why? Because she herself is deeply involved in a court case trying to fight off severe harassment that sounds very akin to mine. Again, another woman, a dedicated journalist this time, who's been put on the program of Zersetzung. And these days, it's not just psychological Zersetzung. This time, it's neurological. They shoot these powerful beams into your head. Do you understand? And they do not stop. There's no way to shield yourself. And they know that, and they keep going. If I don't wear 4 layers of aluminium around my head at night, I wake up and my head feels damaged. Because the software that's picking up the radar that can see me inside my home horns in on me and just fires every second of every day when it sees an opportunity to fire. Do you understand what this is, Tony? Robin? And the only people who I've seen really fight tooth and claw are women. because the men let us down yet again. Because the men either do not understand what this is, do not want to understand, or just far too busy with more important things than saving lives of their ex-colleagues. Do you understand what's going on? People are being maimed systematically in their home. I did not have, let alone a day, I did not have an hour over the last 11 months where someone didn't shoot a military microwave beam into my body. Do you understand that? What needs to happen for you guys, men, to get going? Tony, Robin, all the others, all the physicists I've written to. Because I am doing my best as a physicist, but frankly, I am out of my depth with this military technology. And frankly, it's really, really hard to research all this when you're under military assault. Do you understand? When you are a sex assault victim every day. When your head is battered with military microwave guns at night, throughout the entire night. Do you understand at last? This is a rerun of the 1940s. Do you understand that? Can you please type into Google microwave weapons, remote neural monitoring? You know what a Fourier transform is. And can you please spend an hour reading up on this? If you don't have the time, look at my website. The whistleblowers are there. They are linked there. Stop007.org. Look at my website. It's there. It's official. And please, these men are ruthless. If you leave me isolated, they gang up, they turn on isolated people like wolves. They are degenerates. They are psychopaths. Do you understand? You have to lock around the victims because together we are strong. But if you leave me on my own to fight for my life and all the other single moms and black women who are being mutilated by MI5, the BND and the Swiss degenerates, who the hell do you think can do that? These assault weapons have been built to assault the politicians who will be protecting your pension funds. They are built to assault the police officers who then might not come out when your house is being robbed because their life is more precious than your stuff. Do you understand what we're dealing with here? Literally now my skull is being cracked by radiation that is so intense it's burning up my head from the inside. I am trying to make log entries and I can see that my handwriting is degenerating just 5 months after my last High Court hearing, when I desperately asked the High Court to put a stop to this madness. Do you understand that this is happening now to a particle physicist? To someone who worked with you at CERN, to someone who worked with you at DAISY, to someone who worked with you at St. John's, and to someone who taught at Hartford College. Do you all understand this now, gentlemen? That women are being maimed and mutilated by our own militaries and our own intelligence agencies. Now the military realm is a man's realm. And can you please now rise, all of you, and stand up, because you are leaving women to fight military men. Do you understand? Again, you leave children and women to fend for themselves because you've got books to write. How degenerate can you all become? This is now the final appeal, and I am naming you all personally. Please. I am asking you, please help me save my life. Speak up for me. Write a letter in support of my case. There are 4 men who can help shut this down. Number 1 is Boris Johnson, the Foreign Secretary, who's in charge of supervising MI6. Because as you probably know, I've been mutilated and maimed with microwave weapons, not just in the UK, in Germany, in Switzerland, in Spain, in the Netherlands, in Italy. And it started in the UK. And I received a death threat and I was assaulted straight after my court hearing in London, going up against British intelligence. So, you know, it's a good guess that we're talking MI6 here. If it's not them, they can talk to MI5, no worries. But Boris Johnson is in charge of supervising MI5. Can you please write a letter to him and say that this has got to come to an end? That my maiming and mutilation and the experimentation on me has got to come to an end, because I can't take this physically anymore. Do you understand? For the last 11 months, I couldn't use my home. I don't have a home to go back to be safe. This is a torture chamber. This is a microwave. For the last 11 months, I didn't sleep a single night where I was not physically assaulted and sexually assaulted most nights. Do you understand? So Boris Johnson is in charge. Alex Younger is in charge of MI6. Dr. Bruno Kahl is in charge of German foreign intelligence. And Dr. Otto Lampe, the German ambassador, is actually in charge of helping me as a German citizen here in Switzerland. These 4 men have done nothing. They all must know about my case. And I am now asking you, please, these men are listed on my website. If you go to stop007.org and you take the first link on the right hand side, the big square with please help us, their address is listed. Please write to them one way or another. Please, I'm asking you. You have to speak up for me, because literally there's not a single victim so far whose life has been saved. Do you understand? And there's not a single victim so far for whom a colleague has spoken up. Do you understand? The 2 things are correlated. This list of people who I've now begged for help comprises high-flying lawyers, comprises top physicists, top engineers, top intellectuals, and historians and philosophers. You all know what I'm talking about when I'm saying we are reliving 1940s. Do you understand? You might not understand the technology, but I have tried to spell it out in my videos. They are on YouTube. On YouTube you can see what happened to me when I tried to report a brutal assault to my head to the Greater Manchester Police. the irregularities. But I am asking you now, seriously, I am dying. My spine was brutally microwaved last night, and there's a video online showing that. The introduction to what happened in Manchester actually shows me being shot in the spine. And when I went to bed, I was shot in the spine again. I was shot into the genitals, and then I had my head corked so that I was writhing. And today I cannot write anymore. I can't actually use my right eye like I could a week ago. And my left eye is getting ever more damaged as well. Do you understand? Because there's a programmatic disintegration program, extermination program run by the intelligence agencies, and what you can or cannot believe is of no bearing to reality. Do you understand? The evidence is there. But you need to look at this because your students are affected, your colleagues are affected. And just as I was trying to look up these gang stalking cases and try to find out who the victims are, I already came across the story of a young black lady at Cambridge University who was suffering from the same thing. And just today I found in the Daily Mail a report of a law undergraduate at Cambridge University complaining about regular break-ins into her home. I think in her case decapitated rubber ducks were left in her home, in her flat. But it sounds strikingly like the harassment I've experienced in my college flat as a fellow. So do you understand? There's a systematic, organized stalking, harassment, psychological disintegration program running here, and it is recruiting people of all walks of life, all classes, but 70% are women. And remember, paranoia and schizophrenia is 60% men. Do you understand? This is not paranoia or schizophrenia. This is women begging for help because they're being assaulted by degenerate, sadistic, psychopathic men in the military and the intelligence agencies and all these snitches that are actually associated with those agencies. The budget of MI5 doubled in 2003, which means it's enough money for MI5 and an entire black MI5 right next to it. Do you understand? That's what it means. So we are fighting for our life. The things that are being done to us are horrific. They are Nazi death camp experiments, and they are being done to women. In Germany, a lot of foreigners. In Britain, a lot of black women. And in the US, ditto. So please, I am asking you because you are top people. I know you have the highest integrity. And together we can solve this problem, because already the people who I've listed, if they just spoke up together, the situation would look different. But if you all just turn away and leave me to do this on my own, I will go the way of Britta Jacquard. I will be tortured to death. My hip is already damaged. My knee is damaged. My right eye is damaged. My left eye is damaged. My thyroid has been irradiated. My lymph nodes have been irradiated. My breasts have been shot into. My spine has been shot into. My rectum has been microwaved. And my vagina has been shot into countless number of times. Do you understand? We're talking military equipment. You are turning away when women, ex-colleagues of yours, old colleagues with whom you used to have lunch, are being publicly, slowly disintegrated. My health has been wrecked within 11 months by these degenerates in the intelligence agencies. For the last 2 months, they have specifically tried to fry my ovaries. Do you understand? This means that the damage is not just in my body, it's in the children I might have one day. And the female line for good forever. Do you understand? This is an extermination program. Do you understand this? There's evidence for that. They're high-profile experts, military intelligence whistleblowers saying the same thing. Could please the brains of the country now speak up? Please, because it is the last time you can speak up. If you don't speak up now, just like in the 1940s, you will be silenced. And then you can silently watch how your family, your country, your institutions, your wealth, and your future prospects and that of your children will be taken to pieces. And I'm not making this up. So please, I am being tortured. Tonight when I go to bed, I have to wear 4 layers of aluminium on my head, like for the last 7 months. I haven't slept in my bed one night without military-grade shielding, and when I did, I regretted it bitterly. I haven't spent a single day in my office since, I think, March, without actual shielding. When I speak to you, that is why I have aluminium behind me. In fact, 2 or 3 layers of it, because one is not enough. Do you now understand? I have contacted Private Eye, The Independent, The Guardian, The Telegraph, The Times. You can look at my tweets. Look at stop007.org, at stop007, at stop007.org. And you can see whom I've tweeted this story to. You can hear me on the Richie Allen show, on the radio. It is public now. The Chief Medical Officer of Finland has tried for over 10 years to have people speak up with her against the abuses committed with microwave weapons and other fancy electromagnetic stuff, and no one spoke up alongside her. She was the only one, apart from some good friends, and then she was murdered with electromagnetic weapons. Do you understand? As a systems analyst, I can tell you that if you do not speak up now, you will not have the chance to speak up again, and you will regret it bitterly. You perhaps know the quote by Martin Niemöller, who said that when they came for the socialists, I didn't speak up because I wasn't a socialist. And when they came for the communists, I didn't speak up because I wasn't a communist. And when they came for the Jews, I didn't speak up because I wasn't a Jew. And when they came for me, there was no one to speak up for me. And as a systems analyst, I tell you that is a systems effect. That is what's called a system nonlinearity. But that is what most other people would call a disaster or war. And that's what we're leading into. This is a full-blown coup d'etat by the intelligence agencies who unilaterally have cancelled our human rights, who unilaterally have now given up on the rule of law. And we can say amen to that, but we know what happened last time we did that. Not me personally, not you personally, but we as mankind. When we did that last time, it didn't end well. And it turned out to just pull down your head and thinking I would rather preserve my cushy position. That didn't last long, did it? So now again, we have this situation. If we don't stop it, this monster will consume us all, because these weapons can shoot at you wherever you are. So if you're a lawyer, the respondents can shoot at you, like the respondents shot at me. If you're a doctor, you can be murdered with these weapons, like Dr. Hans Scheiner has been, I think in 2010, or 2012 even, I have to look it up. Do you understand? If you're a doctor and you're campaigning for better standards against maybe a big corporation, you can be given cancer, you can be given a heart attack with these weapons. Do you understand? I do remember that one of the doctors at St. John's College told me that he was personally campaigning to have, for example, better, I think it was plastic pipes and connections, for patients, and have them standardized. Well, if a big corporation doesn't like that, you might be shot in the face with a microwave gun. Do you understand? So this is now my final appeal. I am dying. I have now, over a full 11 months, received insane amounts of dosages. I have been tortured in ways that people cannot imagine. My brain print has been read out. It has been demonstrated to me, and yes, this is possible. We have DARPA whistleblowers saying yes, this is possible. And it makes sense if you understand Fourier transforms. My brain print has been read out. A couple of months ago, my harassers, attackers, whatever you want to call them, amused themselves with shooting me in the vagina when I fell asleep. They waited until I would fall asleep and then I would get an electric shock. An actual shot with a military gun into the vagina. And I'm not making this up. And then after a while, they started amusing themselves with just cooking my knee joints. But now, for the last 3 months, they've amused themselves with essentially moving my hands against my will, making them contract. Last night, as I said, I was up until 2 a.m. answering the pleas of desperate people who approached me and wrote to me saying, yes, I'm a single mom with an autistic child. They're abusing me exactly like you say. And then when I went to bed at 2 a.m., they shot into my spine, as I said, then in the vagina again, and then they cooked my head. So I had to get up again, make shielding, and I slept 3 hours last night. And this afternoon, I was exhausted. And just at 6:30 p.m, I've got so much to do, but I'm so exhausted. And I had been assaulted the entire day. I received so many brutal shots into the head today that by the time I sat down to actually write into my logbook, I realized that my handwriting isn't what it used to be. When I drove my car to go shopping, I realized that actually my perception had changed, and my right eye is not what it used to be. I can't use my right eye like I used to. Do you understand? And this is just the degradation they inflicted on me within a few months of the High Court rejecting my desperate pleas and me not being able to go back because I still haven't found a lawyer willing to stand up for human rights, even though the vast majority of them bleat on their website how they're human rights lawyers. Yeah, my ass. What is the point of standing up for human rights if you're not willing to stand up for human rights, if European citizens are being tortured to death in their own home? Where are the human rights lawyers now? And what is the frickin' point in writing yet another physics textbook when we are dying, when physics is being used to exterminate us? Because for you, dear physics colleagues, to understand this technology is easy. I could understand things much faster than other people because of my education, but I have now reached my limit because I am physically disintegrating. I'm being neurologically degraded on purpose by psychopaths who know that my brain is the only thing I have as a scientist, and who have attacked everything else, who've already moved. A clinical psychopath next to my parents, who has attacked since then, the neighbor on one side has attacked me at night as well, and who's just voluntarily transferred from working in an old people's home to working in a hospice the night shift. What do you think that is? Coincidence? Do you see? And some of my physics colleagues have actually visited my home. You have seen my parents. You have seen my family. You know what sort of people we are. My parents are really good people, and they are now being, literally their life is being demolished. And everything that they paid for me to go to university, is now being disintegrated by the lowest scum from the BND that you can get. And by the degenerates of the Verfassungsschutz, or whatever they call themselves, those who have these weapons and who move people next door to other people. Because all victims report that. They all say they are renting flats next to us. And when you see the money streams that flow into these organizations, you know that they can afford it easily. But basically this is it. You have now, some of you have actually been to my house. You have met my parents. You've met my siblings. And you know how much we love each other. You know what a perfect family and how perfectly happy we were. And we're being artificially disintegrated by degenerates. And none of you speak up for us. None of you speak up for me. And all it would take is a letter. All it would take is a letter. And then you can copy and paste the same letter and send it to 4 addresses to address those 4 people. And maybe CC in the newspapers who I have contacted them and they have turned me down. Because it's so easy to turn down, a young woman. These newspapers do not care about Generation Y. I have learned that. But they also don't seem to care about women. And the fact that women are being mutilated by military personnel, that is not newsworthy. But do you understand? This is now my final appeal. If you do not do anything, if you personally don't do anything, my family will be disintegrated. My sister will be attacked like I am. My brother will be attacked like I am. My mother has already been attacked like I was. My best friend has already been stalked. Her mother has already been attacked, exactly like I was. And she was almost hit by lightning on a clear day between 2 tall buildings, and the lightning struck a stone next to her. Not her. And anybody who knows physics knows that this is so unlikely, that it's much more likely to come from a device that's been manufactured by Applied Energetics and is being now sold around the world. And it's called laser-guided energy. It's a laser-guided lightning device. But these most amazing things kept happening to my family and my friends. And if you look at my YouTube channel, you can see the video where my kidney has been damaged live. You can see the video when literally I am being shot in the head, sitting here at my desk. And I'm being shot in the head now. The top of my head is absolutely agonizing because a machine just keeps firing military microwave shots, military grade microwave shots into my skull until I degrade. Out of vindictiveness, because I dared to go to the High Court, because I dared to ask the High Court to protect my life. Just as much out of vindictiveness against a defenseless woman, the intelligence agencies decided to cripple my hip when I dared to request a cease and desist from German Federal Intelligence, and I dared to submit a complaint to the Investigatory Powers Tribunal. Do you understand what this means for our democracy when this happens? And when this keeps happening? Because we are all foreigners. I am a foreigner in Germany, even though I'm a German citizen. I'm an Ausländer. And so is my best friend. And so is my best friend's mother. And so is my mother. And I'm sure they consider my siblings Ausländer as well, even though they were born in Germany. So I ask you now for final time, if you all have the spine to speak up to save an old colleague's life, we can turn the ship around. But if you do what you did the last 11 months, when I begged you for help and you just ignored me, you just diverted my emails and just passed them on to my husband, not to me, smearing me with mental illness without being a psychiatrist, without having looked at the links, without having looked at the statistics. I'm sorry, the time for that is over. I have the data now. I have the data and I can corroborate the data. And there are thousands, I tell you, there are thousands of people in every country being experimented on by the intelligence agencies. And not one person has escaped with their life intact. Not in one case have the intelligence agencies been told no. This far and no further. Not once. Just tonight, I turned for help to another lady in Belgium who's fighting a court case against these degenerates. Also, a single mom. Her child has been taken away from her. She's been chipped against her will, implanted. Actually implanted, yes, that happens. They come into your home. She's got little scars all over her body, very fine scars, because it's done with a laser these days, you see. They put in an implant and then that implant grows inside of you. And she's been implanted multiple times. And then to torture her, they trigger the implants so that she feels agonizing pain. And just on Sunday, we had a discussion about her court case, to which I am submitting my testimony. And that meeting went wonderfully. We spoke to victims in France, in Belgium, in Poland. I was in Switzerland. And we discussed her court case. And she was really optimistic. And these degenerates who listen into the Skype conversations and listen into her flat like they listen into mine, hated the fact that we were all so jubilant. So straight after the meeting, I was assaulted brutally. And now that I spoke to her today, a day later, she confessed that she too was assaulted so bad. She was writhing in bed the entire day, and she's a woman who was used to torture. It's called no-touch torture, and it's being done with microwave weapons, with implants and remote neural monitoring. And this is all not just technically feasible. In actual fact, it's technology from the 1980s, if not 1970s. It has been guinea pigged on MI5 and MI6 agents and many other agents around Europe, I'm sure. But for those, I do have evidence. And now it's being shipped to civilians. Do you understand what this means? And the intelligence agencies pick the absolute weakest in society. They pick single women. Already they are through with pensioners and prisoners. They had those 10 years ago. Now it's single moms, young women, younger women, and they want ever younger women. Because just imagine how much these sadists can get off when they can shoot a microwave gun into a woman's vagina for protecting herself with aluminium shielding. And now imagine how they can get off with implants or remote neural monitoring. Remote neural monitoring means that your brain can be remote controlled. And yes, it is possible. You don't have to believe me. You can talk to Dr. Robert Duncan or many, many, many other people who have blown the whistle on this over and over and over. Do you understand? We're talking about death camp experiments being rerun again on thousands of victims whose testimony, if you just cared to look, would be on YouTube for you to see. It is on YouTube, but then you would also see it. And on Twitter. And on blogs. And now I too have a website. I too have a Twitter feed where I complain about the assaults against me. So now, dear colleagues, this is the final call. I ask you to please, this week, please write to those 4 men who can stop the assaults against me. Because these assaults follow me whichever European country I go to. And there are victims who say they follow you worldwide. So there's no escape. Do you understand? These programs have to be shut down. It is not normal to live in fear in your own home. It is not normal to be sexually assaulted by having stuff shot into your genitals over and over. It is not normal to have your kidney damaged and then have the precise amount of kidney damage read out from your medical file for weapons testing. It is not normal to be, willfully contaminated with nanoparticles to then torture you even more, to read out your brain print even more. It is not normal to have your eyes controlled. After they've assaulted my mother, and after they assaulted my best friend's mother, the latter of whom is in her 70s, and after they stalked my best friend, they also took my sister-in-law. They did remote neural monitoring, and they amused themselves by turning her eyes into a skull and making her limbs move around uncontrollably. And this can be done with remote neural monitoring. And do you see the attack pattern? Because they attack the women, you see. My mother, my best friend's mother, my best friend, my sister-in-law. Because these are sexual sadists. You know how a military that is marauding through a country just goes around raping the women and killing the children. Well, this is what our own militaries are now doing here. And this is why in the UK most of the women who are being maimed and mutilated and tortured are black. Because your white public school boys take them to be the enemy inside the UK. And like a marauding army, they maim and mutilate them, these degenerates, because that's the only thing these insane men know how to do. And in Germany, that's why, for the BND, which grew out of the Gestapo, I will never be German enough. I mean, I've got brown hair, brown eyes. I look just like the material, their word, not mine, that they used to exterminate. So of course I will be picked for experiments. Of course my sister, my mother will be picked for experiments. Of course my best friend, who's also a foreigner, will be picked, and her mother, for experiments. But dear colleagues, will you at last speak up? Was I really that worthless as a colleague, that low? Did you hate me that much that you thought that it's okay? If someone should turn on me to exterminate me, to maim me in my own home, that it's okay? That you really wouldn't mind that much? Because then maybe I completely misread you all. And if you feel like that about me, do you feel like that about the black lady from Cambridge, who was a very, very bright student and who did so many things and could really improve matters? And do you also think like that about a lady called Rochelle Finlayson, who put up a testimony on YouTube, which is actually linked from my website? You can find it. You can find it in the section Rock the Boat, because these people are rocking the boat, the whistleblowers and the victims who actually dare to speak up. Will you also listen to Rochelle's testimony and think it's totally fine if she gets exterminated and tortured to death, and her young years are being just devastated for no good reason, just because a bunch of white men didn't have the bollocks to tell another bunch of white men to get their fuck down, sit down on their ass and do their job, and not just jack off on work time, because that's what it is. That's why 70% of all the victims are women, because this is sexual. This is a marauding army running amok in its own country, living out their sexual aggressions and their sexual perversions. That is the only way to explain the data. Do you understand this now? Because this is my final appeal, and I also appeal to all the women who hopefully have a bit more sense than the men. And who hopefully in St. John's, at Daisy, at CERN, can also kick the men into action. Because why is it always that the women have to fight these military fights? Literally, defenseless women should go and fight men with military equipment? What the fuck has the world come to? You losers. And when a woman literally approaches men, she gets turned down? What? This is really the final appeal. I try to appeal to Private Eye, and they are out. Guardian, Independent, The Times, Paul Dacre, personally. He couldn't give a shit. And now I'm appealing to you. I'm sorry, I sound very aggressive, but that's because I had my organ damaged just the past week. I had my organ damaged, my kidney damaged, whilst I was filming and proving that there's a script that fires exactly the same second of every minute. You can see that video up online. And maybe it's not the right frequency, but certainly I could tell that there was some beam being fired, and it seemed to correlate with agonizing pain into my body. And these attackers, they are within 200 meters of my home. The Swiss police didn't want to investigate. The Swiss criminal police didn't want to investigate. The German police didn't want to investigate. They actually returned my letter so that it doesn't appear in my file. The UK police refused to investigate. You can see the videos up online on YouTube, what happened. The Swiss attorney refused. The UK Attorney General refused. The High Court refused. The Investigatory Powers Tribunal refused. The German Federal Intelligence Agency, Bundesnachrichtendienst, refused to do anything about it. Dr. Otto Lampe, the German ambassador in Switzerland, refused to do anything about it. So, will you do something about it? About my case, because I'm trying to help others, but I need somebody to save me so that I can save them. I didn't have an income for the last entire year because every waking moment I was scrambling for lawyers, for measuring devices, or I was just writhing in my flat from pain. I was building shielding. I was trying to find out what to do. And every single time I actually tried to do something to earn money for my consultancy, it was taken to pieces. The website was taken offline. My email inbox was taken offline. I just posted videos how my Twitter feed is manipulated. My YouTube tweet is manipulated. 2 external hard drives with evidence have been demolished, or corrupted, I should say, within 12 hours of each other. 2 laptops have been hacked into. My website, which I built to try to draw attention to these rampant crimes, has been hacked from the back end and has been modified live as I was trying to work on it. And if you look at my Twitter feed, I've posted the messages I keep getting from agents who are gloating about new frequencies being phased in when my head at the time is being cracked. It feels like that new frequency that was phased in feels like your brain is being burnt up from the inside. And they gloat about it publicly on Twitter because they know they can get away with it because you do nothing. When the police is in deep capture, when the Attorney General is in deep capture, when the High Court is clearly in deep capture and doesn't want to do anything about it, and the IPT is just a kangaroo court to start with, who do you turn to in our society to have this changed? to have sanity and the rule of law restored? Who do you turn to, if not to the lawyers, to the scientists, to the engineers, to the academics, to the philosophers, to the historians, all of whom should know what this means? That's why Oxford has this reputation, not because we're the thickest ones of the lot, but because we should be able to figure this out. So I am now turning to you again because you are the last people I can turn to. I have turned to my local police. I've turned to the German police. I've turned to the UK police, the Attorney Generals, the High Court, the Investigatory Powers Tribunal, the German ambassador, the local consulate. No one is willing to do anything, and at the same time these crimes are not just rampant and documented, they are increasing in number, as they obviously would when these weapons are being manufactured in large numbers and the police refuse to do anything about them. So please, will you also refuse? Because tomorrow I'm talking to my colleague again, the lady in Belgium who's fighting on her own as a single mom, who's been chipped, maimed, tortured, her career wrecked, her health wrecked, and she is still fighting, and she's got more fight than you lot. Are you that stupid, that corrupt, that lazy, or that ignorant? Please decide, or please just say, oh, I'm sorry, I was busy, I didn't take this seriously, but this is now the final boarding call to sanity, people. You either get on this plane, or if you're not willing to check in, if you're not willing to board and actually help me take this plane up, we will all see what we call democracy crumble around us, and the ground will start shaking, and I promise you that, because I've seen that before in my life and it's not pretty. So could you please all ask yourself deep down if you think it's worth your time writing 1 or 4 letters? Is it worth your time contacting the journalists now, all together now? All of us with all our expertise in history, and explain to them what it means in the historical context. The physicists explain to them how the physics works and why this is so pernicious. And maybe the engineers explain to them just how cheaply you can make these weapons and how devastating it might be. Could we maybe all work together now? The medics, you should be able to wrap your head around the fact that if somebody gets shot at into their body with a beam that has the power of your little microwave at home, that's really, really bad. You can figure it out. And when you hear stuff like that, you can say, no, we really don't need that in our society. So please, I have now for 11 months tried to fight this on my own. I was ridiculed all the way into the High Court. I was even muscle pulsed when I was standing up in front of a judge. I just didn't want to say. I literally had electromagnetic pulses shot into my thigh, standing in front of a judge. But that was frankly minor. After surviving an assassination attempt, after breaking down, collapsing from pain, having literally almost nails shot into my skull with a nail gun, just after my first hearing. Do you understand? I am saying the truth, as I've always said the truth to you. And every single time I said something, it turned out to be the right thing in the end. So please, please, this is the final call, all of you. And I'm not angry at you, but I am desperate, because today I couldn't actually exist a single hour without intense pain. Do you understand? Because I'm being shot into, my head gets fried, my head is cooked up, and I am in agonizing pain, exactly like the NSA whistleblower Brian Tew. Or maybe he was CIA. Either way, if you type Brian with a Y, Brian Tew, T-E-W, or you just go to my website, stopwo7.org, you can see how he is writhing in pain. And that's me, people. Because the same nanotech and the same beams that they use on him, they use on me. And what it is about, it's about neurological degradation, neurological disintegration. It is neurological Zersetzung. Do you understand? That is the 21st century version of Zersetzung. Will you do something about this, or will you allow it to become mainstream? I'm sorry, I'm not angry at you, but this is agonizing to try to get through to you lot, and all of you think whatever piffling stuff you're doing is more important. It's not. It's about saving lives now, because this is a crime in progress. It is ongoing. It's premeditated. There's a shift service. This is not an accident. This is not a homicide or manslaughter. This is premeditated maiming, grievous bodily harm, torture and murder. Premeditated, repeated, every hour of every day for months. Do we even have a category for that in the legal system, or is it off the chart? Because last time people did that, they got hanged after the Nuremberg trials. At least somebody got hanged. So please, do you understand? Look at the material. It's now literally 12 days to Christmas. If you feel Christian, if you feel compassionate, or if you just feel human, please, could you please, I beg you, start speaking up for me by writing letters and actually demanding a response from these 4 men. You are lawyers, you can all figure it out how to do it to have maximum impact if you work together. All of us, CERN was founded such that these things don't happen again. This is now literally my final appeal to you. But this time I want to address you personally. All of you. I want to ask you personally. I have literally, I'm sorry, when I'm not using the right words, or when I lose the thread, or when I repeat myself, it's because I keep being shot at with really intense pulses that seem to come over my shielding and right into the top of my head. It's like an electrical shock to the head. And this is how I lived now for months. This side is agonizingly painful because they're drilling a beam and I just don't want to show it whilst I'm talking to you. My God. So please, please, I am sending this to all of you now. This is the final call. And I'm going to read it out. I am sending this to Professor Robin Devenish, my supervisor at Hartford College. I'm sending this to Professor Tony Weidberg, my supervisor at CERN and at St. John's. I'm sending it to Professor Patrick Roche, also my advisor at Hartford College. I'm sending this to Professor Subia Sarkar, Professor Amanda Cooper Sarkar, Professor Graham Ross, Professor Andrei Starinets. I'm sending it to Professor Arnulf Quart of Universität of Göttingen. I'm sending it to Professor Rick Yoshida. I'm sending it to Dr. Achim Geiser, Dr. James Ferrando, Dr. Claire Gwenlin, Dr. Chidam Iseva, Dr. Roman Walczak, Dr. Uri Karshon, Dr. Grzegorz Zielak, Dr. Matthew Wing, Dr. Peter Bussey, Dr. Hartmut Stadie, Dr. Tobias Haas, Dr. Wolfram Zeuner, Dr. Chris Youngman, Dr. Halina Abramovich, and Professor Wesley Smith. These are my colleagues in physics, and all of you, personally, you are the people who know me. And I'm asking you, get behind this as physicists. I can't do all the actual reverse engineering of this technology on my own whilst being tortured and assaulted every minute of every day. I need your help. And I need you to get CERN as a community to speak up against these crimes. I need you to do that because this is what CERN was founded for. Please, this is happening in Europe now. This is happening in CERN member states. I'm asking you, please speak up. Then I'm sending it to my colleagues at St. John's College, and again, I ask you personally to get on the case, because this is urgent. You understand, single women are being mutilated and assaulted inside their home. Their children are being assaulted. They are ganged up upon in a professional, systematic and organized fashion by military personnel and by people trained by military personnel using military technology. So this is something that everybody should be able to get behind. And I'm not emailing you to pester you, I'm emailing you because this is serious. And I would not make such a big thing out of it if I didn't have sufficient evidence to claim that this is the case. Remember, I did go to the High Court. And yes, it was thrown out, but then again, I was under continuous assault. And I've got evidence. I've got evidence for the death threats. I've got evidence for the things that happened to me. So ask yourself why. Why would someone go to such a length? So please, I'm asking you all, and I'm asking Professor Miney, Professor Mark Friedland, Professor Alan Grafen, Professor Kate Nation, Dr. Susanna Olszewska, Professor Zoltan Molnar, Professor J.D. Pandit, Dr. Jeremias Prussell, Professor Walter Matley, Dr. Sandra Campbell, Professor Linda McDowell, Professor Charles Batty, Professor Paul Craig, Professor David Coleman, Professor Fraser Armstrong, Dr. Heather Bowman, Dr. Teresa Burt, Dr. Mark Cannon, Professor Richard Compton, Professor Malcolm Davies, Professor Steve Elston, Professor Georg Gottlob, Professor Nicholas Harbert, Professor Rosalind Harding, Dr. Patrick Hayes, Dr. Alison Hill, Professor Caroline Larrington, Professor Nikolai Lübecker, Professor Mohammed Salah Omri, Dr. Jason Schnell, Dr. Hannah Skoda, Professor Simon Whittaker, Dr. William White, and Dr. Alistair Wright. I'm asking you all personally to please get going and do something to help us, victims. Please, this is serious. Every single one of you can do something. And if all of you work together, you can do a lot. But I can't fight this fight on my own. You're essentially leaving single women to fight the Western intelligence agencies and the military. This cannot be done with women on their own. Not when it's all men, and not when the men have got all the weapons, even the classified ones. So please, get on the case. And finally, I'm also sending it to those people who might or might not remember me from my time at Hertford College. And I'm also sending it to the lawyers at Hertford College, because I think that all the lawyers in the UK should know about this, that this is real, this is happening, and people need help. And I'm appealing to you, even if you might not remember me, or if we might have never met. And the Hertford College connection is really the only thing that connects us, but I am telling you, this is important. This is really important. And this is a tenuous connection, I admit, but then again, you are teaching at Hartford, and I was taught at Hartford, and I was also taught to stand up for what is right, in science, but also in life more generally. So maybe you will understand. And maybe the lawyers could amongst themselves find somebody who could support me, because I really need help. I really need the support of lawyers. So please, I'm sending this to Professor Peter Milliken, to Dr. Michael Fordham, to Professor Peter Bull, Professor Christopher Timon, Professor Alan Bogg, Professor Alison Young, and Sir Walter Bodmer. And Sir Walter was the principal when I was at Hartford College, and I'm appealing to him as well. And I'm asking you all to use your connections, your colleagues, and everybody you know to speak up, because this is serious. Our intelligence and military intelligence complex in general is running amok, and it's picking people at will. So please, speak up. Please, please go to my website and please write to those 4 men who I list. And if you can think of a better way of doing it, please write to me. You can email me at contact@stop007.org. And please help me, because we need to, as professionals, we need to tackle this problem. Please, please, please at last help me and help all the other victims, please. Because we need the help of you.